What dark sides are there to some tourist attractions that people don't know about? The Alps still has tens of thousands of lost corpses frozen under the snow, left over from the White War and even earlier times, like Hannibal's army. Rome is filled with gypsies who make their entire living off scamming, robbing, and selling garbage to tourists. And not the silly American gypsies who live in mobile homes and tell fortunes. These ones are actual thieves and fake beggars who train their children to do anything to get €1 off you. One kid grabbed my friend's leg and screamed in broken English he wouldn't let go unless we gave him money. My friend had been harassed by 10 other gypsies' children that day, so he picked him up and threw him 10 feet away. The kid flipped him off and then ran to find a new mark. If you come to Iceland as a tourist and see a warning sign, then heed it. Icelanders won't make a sign for something unless it is absolutely necessary. For example, there is a big waterfall, Gullfoss, on the main tourist track that most of the time is partially covered by ice, very fast moving, and has a bed of jagged rocks. You fall in, you will die. So many tourists climb over a warning sign that is supposed to prevent you from walking down an ice path where you will slip down to your death. I've even seen them carry their small kids down to the very edge, not to even go in, to detail about the boiling hot water fountains that burn you, lava fields, people getting pulled out to sea by the waves while taking holiday photos on the beach. Thailand, pretty much all of it. Thailand ranks #2 in the world for road fatalities. Prostitution and HIV. Lots of drugs. Police are extremely corrupt. The government is extremely corrupt. Mosquito with malaria and dengue fever. Cobras, vipers, scorpions, and giant centipedes. Pretty much no law enforcement of any kind, environmental, industry, traffic, etc. Except to take bribes from tourists. The education system sucks. Human trafficking, especially in the fishing industry. The use of banned pesticides on food supplies. There is a lot more to add. Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods casinos are so huge, I'm convinced people get away with living there. I worked at a retail store at one of the casinos, and every time I had a morning shift, this weirdo would pop in and take a handful from the free samples bowl. He'd be muttering to himself and just looking all shifty-eyed. I also heard a story about 20 or 30 years ago. Some old guy sat on a bench at the casino and died. Nobody noticed for hours. They thought he was sleeping. IDK how true it is, but it seems likely. So many of those animal experiences, especially in developing nations, are just so horrible it irks me every time I see someone patting a tiger. Knowing that the poor animal has been bred in captivity to live this horrible life, never given adequate space or living conditions, that they've been drugged to make them docile. I wish people would actually check that these places treat animals humanely before they went. A town in Germany called Regensburg has a town square that has a bunch of stores and a church, and is popular with tourists and natives alike. What often isn't known is that the area used to be the Jewish ghetto. Back during the Renaissance, people were fine with the Jews because everything was good, but when things got bad, they got the short end of the stick. They had 4 days to leave the town, and the ghetto and their cemetery were destroyed. This was all around 1700s-ish. The remaining gravestones were added to houses in the nearby area as trophies, and the aforementioned church was built on the ghetto with over 4,000 of the gravestones to speed production. There is a monument of the foundation of the old synagogue, but a lot of people still don't know about this. Fun fact, Kepler lived here. Berlin is full of them. Most tourists come to see the remains of the wall, but never hear about the Allied strategic bombing, or the rape of Berlin. They know about the Holocaust, but they rarely really think about it beyond Jews died. Lots of places go unnoticed. Hitler's bunker is now a parking lot. The monument to book burnings is relatively hidden. The destroyed buildings were razed and rebuilt. I'm very late to give my side of this story. This is a bit more well known than some others, but around Mount Fuji, there is a forest called, which is the official name, but it's referred to as the Suicide Forest. The volcanic rock under the forest interfere with cell signals, compass needles, basically anything that can save you. It's not very dangerous and is super beautiful. I've been there. It's not dangerous unless you get lost. Once you get lost, you're screwed. Due to the slow escape rate, or whatever you call it, people end up committing suicide there, which led to that place being the ideal suicide spot, even if you are not lost. Every year hundreds of bodies are found. The one time I went there, I crawled into an icy dark cave to see if I could find any cool rocks to add to my rock collection, which I did, but I also found a noose. In Amsterdam, a lot of the girls you see in the red light district are a result of child trafficking. This is one of the reasons that, if you take a picture of them, there is a high chance that someone will come out, beat you up, and steal your phone/camera. People don't want these girls to be seen around the world. So next time you go there and think it's good fun to absorb the culture and pay for a prostitute, think of the families that have had their daughters taken away from them so young who don't know if they are still alive or not. Most of the employees at Disney World in Florida make a pitiful wage. That guy that just let you in the park, he has 4 roommates in a small townhouse just so they don't live in the ghetto. The guy handing you your food at a counter service location definitely has 2 jobs, so he can afford to buy groceries. Dubrovnik, Croatia. Prices are so high that you are paying 5,6 almost up to 10 times the prices for everything. From fancy food and hotel rooms to bottles of water and bread, you would pay another citizen. Most of the locals barely afford to live there, and they have to resort to selling shitty souvenirs made in China. Also, the popular party beach of Rosen is a giant sausage fest, so don't bother going there if you are looking for sex. Not really a dark side, only a heads up. Camel rides at the pyramids in Giza/Cairo. The drivers will take you out into the desert past the pyramids for the best pictures, then shake you down for extra money or threaten to leave you out there. Or worse, there are reports of women being raped with the same scenario. I'm from New Orleans. The disparity in lifestyles downtown is drastic and unnerving. Bourbon Street. So many people indulgently drinking themselves into a coma, while a block or 2 over at any time of day there are people struggling to find a solid meal. While right next door in the central business district the ex-an executive drives his Bugatti out of a garage within plain view of the homeless guy digging through the trash for his next meal. Making what you earn or deserve is fine, but you have to question a system that essentially ignores the less fortunate. When in Nick and riding the subway, try to know where you are going beforehand. You don't want to make a mistake and end up in a really bad section of the city. Ask the conductor if you aren't sure as a last resort. Try asking other passengers first. Minimize what you say. We don't need your story, just where you are trying to get to. New Haven, Connecticut. We are home to Yale University, and if you come here to see a Yale event, you're only going to be shown the richest, safest parts of the city. They won't show you the bus stops where people fight and sell drugs, or tell you that the police rounded up all the homeless people right before the tourists arrive for graduation. Many of the red light district workers in Amsterdam are actually lover boy victims, or victims of sex trade, lured to Western Europe under false pretenses such as a professional dancing career or modeling career. Many are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, and most don't know. Source: met a lover boy survivor in group therapy. From India. Ayurvedic massages are good. But remember, in Ayurveda, the massages are given by people of the same sex only. So if you see otherwise, it's probably a facade for sex tourism. Also, most of the Ayurvedic medicines given by shady shacks and hotels are just cheap substitutes. Go for gut-run places which would be relatively inexpensive and authentic with qualified practitioners. It's pretty well known, but the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco is one of the most popular suicide sites in the world. I think the estimate is something like 1,600 bodies between 1937 and 2012. The official count stopped on 997 in 1995 after a local radio host had offered a case of Snapple to the family of the 1,000th suicide victim. Local media was asked to stop reporting the total number of jumpers. They have phone boxes along the bridge that connect to suicide hotlines and have volunteer patrol people who offer to talk to you if you are acting especially agitated or suspicious while on the bridge. Now they've added a safety net and they plan to put up a suicide barrier, but the project keeps getting delayed because of funding. Besides the supervolcanoes under Yellowstone and craters of the moon that could kill us all, at Yellowstone, there are the boiling lakes, where the paths go straight through some of the boiling water. Believe it or not, if you touch the boiling lakes, you might get burned. Not to mention, if you fell in. At craters of the moon, there are dozens of signs warning you to stay with the path or a guide. Of course, most tourists are way too smart to get in trouble, right? Needless to say, nearly every summer we get news of a group who wandered off the trail and probably fell into a hidden or covered cave or shaft. Unfortunately, they don't usually survive. There are more deaths than you'd think at Disney World. Ignoring the accidents, heat stroke, heart attacks, etc. There are many people who commit or attempt to commit suicide while in the park. From jumping out of the boat during Splash Mountain, only to be crushed by the next boat, to jumping out of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, etc. etc. Source: there isn't much in the way of proof as the parks shut down most, if not all reports, to prevent any negative press. I worked in that industry, not Disney specifically, for 1.5 years. You end up meeting and getting to know people who work at all the different tourist attractions, if you're into that social life. Then you start hearing all the crazy stories others have witnessed or heard of. In 1906, the Dutch stormed the southern kingdom of Baden in order to gain control over Bali. This resulted in horrific battles and the loss of many Balinese lives. News of the event brought on strong protest in Holland, resulting in a change of strategy and position of the Dutch colonial control in Indonesia. Ultimately, this led the Dutch to reconstitute the image of Balinese culture as enlightened under colonial ruling, a place of peace, a lost paradise, where locals are untouched by wrongdoing, while sweeping the Dutch atrocities under the table. The image was so well received by the rest of the world, the Dutch effectively forced the Balinese to uphold it. They had to make art, build and tend rice fields, all in the traditional style. TLDR, the Netherlands create the lost paradise image of Bali after invading it. I'm Mexican and don't travel to Mexico. The popular resorts try their best to keep tight-lipped about the cartel influence and violence, but it's simply everywhere. Combine all the fighting between cartels throughout Mexico with the fact that the majority of government is paid off by these cartels, makes me look elsewhere to go on vacation. New Orleans is a human sex trafficking hotspot, especially around Bourbon Street. People get kidnapped around the Bath streets, especially where dumbass tourists get blackout drunk in public because it's New Orleans. That's what they do here, and sold off as sex slaves. This doesn't happen often overall, but relative to other cities, it's really common. Women primarily, but men as well, and of any age. Human trafficking is America's best kept tragedy. Mackinac Island has a pretty intense drug problem for being so widely regarded as a safe, family-friendly vacation spot. Working on the ferry docks, I'd see college-aged students head over to the island bright-eyed and joyful, only to return a few months later sullen and burnt out, claiming that the place chewed them up and spat them out. Washington Square in Philadelphia is one of the nice parks in downtown Philadelphia, but most people walking through it don't know underneath is a mass grave from the Revolutionary War as well.